Hi, I'm Mandy. Welcome to my channel. If you haven't already, please do check out my first video, which was about my pre-birth memory. So memories of a place I was just before I was born and came into my body, my human existence here. So I believe this pre-birth memory has played a massive part in the experiences I've had during my life, and which are quite unusual, a lot of them, to say the least, and also just my spirituality in general, because I've always had that memory, always. So I've not grown into a spiritual person. I've always been a very spiritual person. So this particular story is something that happened probably about 20 years ago. I was married to my ex-husband at the time, and we had just bought a house which was in need of some modernisation and things. But in the meantime, the person who had sold us the house had left various bits of furniture and light fittings and stuff like that around, so we could use just temporarily. So we'd gone to bed, and my husband had fallen asleep, but I'm a bit of a night owl, and I tend to sort of lay awake for ages before I sleep. And I was laying on my right hand side, and on the right hand side of the bed, after a small gap, was a big wardrobe, or a closet as you'd call it in America. But this was completely mirrored. Not my taste. Remember, this was left by the previous owner. So completely mirrored. And I was just laying there with my eyes open, and suddenly in this mirror I saw something appear, and the best way I can describe it is a big ball shaped, large, big ball shaped, like a bit like a bubble, I guess. That's the nearest thing I can describe it as. But it wasn't solid. It didn't. I don't believe you could have touched it and it would have had an outside, like maybe a bubble that would then pop. It was formed like that, but actually it was all swirling, sparkling gases inside. Just beautiful, really, golds and yellows and sort of bright colours, and it was just swirling around and twinkling, and I'd never seen anything like this. And bear in mind how big it was as well. So probably at least the size of a football, rugby ball, if not maybe a little bit bigger. And yeah, so I sat and looked at this thing, and I wasn't scared at all, which is kind of weird, because something appearing like that in your room, it sounds kind of scary, but it actually wasn't. It was very beautiful, and it had a good feeling to it. But I was looking at it, and I felt that it was trying to tell me something, not like with words, just kind of the feeling I had from it. But I decided that because I was looking at a reflection of this, I needed to look at it straight on. I just needed to see it for real, not just in a reflection. I knew where it was, I could obviously tell, and it was across past the end of the bed to the left hand corner of the bed, outside the door to our ensuite bathroom. So, oh, I forgot to mention, while all this was going on, this thing appeared. At the very same time, the light shade, which was again something that had been left by the previous owner, and it was, I think you'd call it concertinas maybe, like a kind of pleated, cheap, papery sort of light shade, just a really basic thing. Was just vibrating so much. The whole room was filled with this energy, like it was so much energy, and the light shade was just not really shaking, just vibrating, and so much noise coming off this vibration. My husband, as far as I was aware, was still asleep. I don't think I was really thinking about that at that point, though, to be fair. I was just so couldn't believe what I was seeing. So anyway, I turned my head and looked towards our ensuite bathroom door, where I knew this would be, presumably would be there. And there it was, just the same as I could see it in the reflection, just hanging there outside the bathroom door, swirling, beautiful, sparkling, I say gas, I'm not saying it was gas, but that's kind of the appearance of it, swirling around, sparkling, bright colours, just there, same sort of size, big. And but pretty much as soon as I looked at it straight on, it started to sort of just reverse back, go backwards, and sort of just disappeared into the door or the corner of the room or something. It just kind of went back and went. So it was literally seconds. I think I looked at it for maybe 5, 6, 7 seconds, not very long. And as soon as it disappeared, the light shades stopped vibrating and the energy just left the room, and that was it. All quiet, all back to normal. So all in all, the whole thing probably only lasted, I don't know, maybe a minute, but it seemed like ages at the time. So that happened. And then suddenly after it disappeared, I started feeling really frightened. And I was just thinking, why am I frightened? I wasn't frightened when it was here. Why am I frightened now? And I came to the realisation, this was just, obviously, it's just a gut feeling, that this thing had come both to reassure me but also to warn me. So I felt that something was going to happen, but it was reassuring me that everything will be okay, everything will be okay, like kind of almost to keep the faith, keep faith. And I didn't hear those words, or at least consciously, but I think at some conscious level I must have received some sort of unspoken word about it, because I was pretty sure that's what it was. So then I got into a panic. Then I started getting really, really worried and a bit upset. So I woke my husband up and started telling him what had happened. And my husband wasn't and isn't, as far as I'm aware, a spiritually minded person. Is very scientifically minded. So I wouldn't necessarily expect a lot of empathy on it from him. So I told him, and he got really quite cross with me and pretty much told me off and told me to just go back to sleep. So anyway, off he went back to sleep, and nothing else, no other incident happened. And at some point, obviously, I slept and woke up in the morning and talked to him, and he apologised to me, and he said that he's really sorry for the way he was. He said he hadn't seen the thing that I saw. He said, but he'd heard the light shaking. He felt all the energy in the room, and he was absolutely terrified. He said, and he just wanted to block it out and go back to sleep. So it kind of explains why his reaction to me was a bit harsh. He was frightened. So that was that. Now we need to move on a couple of weeks, because there's a connection, I believe, with the next thing. I've no proof there's a connection, but it seems very, very likely. 2 weeks later, I don't want to use names here because I feel that it's an invasion of their privacy, but someone very, very close to me in my family suddenly collapsed. This person was only at the time in his 30s, so very young, healthy, non-smoker, and he suddenly collapsed. And cut a very long story short, he was taken to Barts by air ambulance, I believe. Not from that, from a local hospital, to Barts in London, which is a top hospital and has a very good cardiac unit, I guess. And it turns out, and what had happened is because of an unknown congenital abnormality in his aorta, which is the big artery, the big wide artery that comes from the heart. There was a narrowing, and over the years this has put lots of pressure on the area, and basically the aorta, as they described it at the hospital, had unravelled like an onion. So basically his aorta, his main artery in his body, had pretty much burst. Okay, and now people don't normally survive this. It's very rare, more especially 20 years ago. It turns out as well that there was other damage because of what had happened in his heart. There's other damage to the heart valves and stuff like that. So he had to go into surgery, open heart surgery. Obviously he was in surgery for 13 hours, and 8 of those hours he was on a heart bypass machine. A really traumatic time of my life, I have to say. This was really traumatic. After, I'm not sure how many hours it was, the consultant told me that they couldn't save him. They tried, the graft on the aorta wasn't taking. But I said, please, just keep trying. And actually they did amazingly. And they did try again, and they saved him. Well, at that point they fixed him up. They managed to repair the aorta, and they had to replace some heart valves with titanium heart valves because they were damaged also. Now I have to kind of jump forward a few weeks here because it was a long road to the next 3 weeks. But 3 weeks later, there he is in intensive care, and he was really completely unresponsive. He now and again chew on his breathing tubes, but in the meantime of that 3 weeks, he had been taken back to theatre and opened up because of internal bleeding. So it was really, really complicated. Organs, all the his vital organs were struggling, and it was really not a good situation at all. And we were taken, myself and his mother were taken into the consultant's room that day, the day I'm talking about. And he was brilliant, the consultant. I had every faith in him. He was a great guy, and basically told us that it's not a good prognosis, that basically either he will die or he will be as he is now, in a sort of vegetative state, I guess. Or the best case scenario, which wasn't a good scenario, was that he would come out of the sort of coma type of situation he was in, that they were having trouble getting him out of, but that he would have severe brain damage and would need 100% care for the rest of his life. So obviously a very upsetting day, and his mother and I went home from the hospital, but I've just missed out almost the most important bit. So, but before we went home, around about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, we went and got ourselves together a bit because it had been really emotional. And we was in the intensive care day room, just me and her. There was nobody else in there. It was a small unit really. Suddenly this lady walks in. I don't know if she walks in. She was suddenly there. I guess she walked in. I don't know. And she was maybe in her late 50s, I would guess. And she was an Asian lady, possibly Indian, or somewhere around that part of the continent. But obviously English spoken, and we could communicate well. And she said hello, and she mentioned the person who was in hospital by name. I have no idea how she knew his name. I'd never seen her before, and I never saw her after this. I don't think she was staff, and people don't just walk in and out of an intensive care unit. Obviously, people can't do that. So I really, to this day, still have no idea where she came from or who she was. But she told me she was a faith healer, and she told me, "You don't need me, you can heal him yourself." And it was literally that's what she said. She didn't go into any other details or told me what to do. She just said that, and I said, okay, I'll try, I think, or something like that. And it sounds silly saying I can't remember her walking out of the room. She probably did, but I just can't remember. I just remember she was there, said this, and then she was gone. And obviously the other person who was with me witnessed all this. This isn't something I've imagined up or something. She saw her, she heard her. So before we left, I said to his mum, "Look, I'm going to try. It can't do any harm." I've never done any sort of healing before, but as I said, I've always been a very spiritual person. So I basically went to his bedside, and I wonder now if anyone saw me doing it, but I can't remember. I can't remember if I pulled the curtains around. I can't remember, but I pretty much placed my hands over him, and particularly over the areas of his heart and stuff that had been opened up. And I suppose, I'm not religious at all, but I suppose it was a type of praying. I was praying for healing energy to come through me to heal him. And nothing happened at the time, but I did feel something, particularly my hands were kind of very rigid, as if all the muscles were tense. And I did feel something happening, but I didn't really think a lot more of it, if I'm totally honest. So we went home. Now, just to wrap up this story, the next morning we every day we went back to the hospital, to the intensive care. And back then, bearing in mind this was, as I say, about 20 years ago, we didn't have mobile phones. So once we left the house, there was always that kind of dread that it was about an hour and a half drive, I think. So there was always this dread that between leaving home and arriving at the hospital and getting up to the intensive care department, that something, he may have died, something awful may have happened. So it was heart-wrenching every single time we went up there. So that's anyway, we went, and it was in an old part of the hospital, and we had to go up a floor or 2 floors, I'm not sure. And it was an old kind of Victorian building, and the intensive care was at the very far end of this long corridor with like double doors going to it, and his bed was sort of facing the double doors. And we was walking down the corridor towards where he would be, and I just could not believe it. Well, neither of us could. He was sitting up, propped up, obviously supported, but propped up in bed, talking to the nurse. This is a man who was likely to die at any point, who, if he did survive, would probably be pretty much in a vegetative state for the rest of his life, and who his consultant, a very, very highly respected consultant at Barts, had told us the day before, you know, there's no chance he's going to regain any sort of normality. And there he was talking. Now, this video is kind of a bit long, so I need to get just round it up a bit by saying he continued to improve, thank God, and he was in hospital for several weeks, but quickly moved to the high dependency unit and needed physiotherapy and etc., etc., to regain his strength. But over an extended period of time, first in the hospital and then at home, he did make a full recovery. Yeah, he still has medication and, you know, and things like that, and has to be checked. But, you know, this is many years later, and he's okay, and he's working, and things like that. But another thing just to say is about a week or two after he came home from the hospital, he had to go into a more local hospital to have scans, etc., of the area to make sure it was repairing okay. And he came out and he said to me, they don't understand something. And I said, what? They said, when they've gone and done the scan, they can see a sparkling area all over the area, you know, of the operation. And they don't know what it is. So I've got to go back tomorrow, I think it was. And they have to put a camera down my throat and look at this a different way. So that's what happened. He went back, they put a camera down. They couldn't find anything. They could never explain it. I will say also, the consultant at Barts who done the op, and the guy who took us aside and talked to us, once he made a recovery, referred to him as the Miracle Man. So that's my story, my healing story. And obviously I was there, I remember it clearly, but it's also slightly a mystery to me. Who was that visiting in the room? The spirit, the circle of lights, sparkling gassy lights. Was that somebody I know? What was it? And, you know, it was someone or something from the spirit realm, I guess. But I don't know the answer, and I don't know who the lady was. The Asian lady who spoke to me and told me to heal him, I don't know, but I'll forever be grateful for her. So that's the end of my story. So thanks for joining me. Don't forget to like if you enjoyed my video, and please subscribe to my channel. This is a new channel, but so many things like this have happened to me during my life that I really want to get them out there and share them with people, knowing full well that lots of people will think I'm completely crazy and won't believe me at all. But that's okay, because there may be some more of you out there that have had unusual experiences, or are just learning about spirituality and on their own spiritual journey, or people who are just curious. So yeah, so I will see you in the next video. Bye.